Hello and welcome to 1500ESPN.com. I'm Derek Wetmore. This is Matthew Coller, and we are going to talk about the Vikings' overtime loss to the Detroit Lions on Sunday at US Bank Stadium. Got to talk about the kicker, Matthew. You were saying it before we started. There's no way to avoid this now. Blair Walsh failed on 2 kicks. We'll get to that in a second. We're also going to talk about Sam Bradford almost and the overall lack of execution by the Vikings in their loss. Before we get started, hey, subscribe to our channel, 1500 ESPN Twin Cities. It's super duper easy. Matthew, the elephant in the room is Blair Walsh. What can the Vikings do at this point?
Well, they could bring in other kickers, but I don't know who those kickers are. Robbie Gould has a job for the New York Giants. He was out there after being let go by the Chicago Bears, but when the Giants kicker had his domestic violence thing, they decided to part ways with him and pick up Robbie Gould, who has been a good kicker in the NFL for a long time. So now you're looking at picking up guys who are free agents off the street. How good are you really going to get in that area? But can you get a kicker whose mind is right, who can make extra points? I mean, now Blair Walsh has missed more extra points than anybody in the NFL, and that's just unacceptable. In a team like this, the kicker becomes much more important, I think, because they're going to be playing a lot of close games all season long. A game like today, this is exactly what you're going to get probably the next time you play the Lions. When you play Washington, you're not going to get a ton of points out of this offense, which today I felt was competent and moved the ball and gave the team a chance to win, and they got robbed of that by a kicker who can't make an extra point now. And then to come out and missed the 46-yarder. I mean, you could say, look, ever since they moved that extra point back, it's caused some problems for more than just him. Last year in Buffalo, Dan Carpenter had problems. Walsh is not the only one. He is worse now in the league, but he isn't the only one. But the 46-yarder should be routine at home for an NFL kicker in the NFL the way it is now. And to have that blocked because it seemed like he was kicking it low and may have even been shanking it anyway is just unacceptable. So now the Vikings are in a very tough spot.
He's hit 12 of his 15 extra points this year. That's 80%, as you mentioned, worse than any other kicker in the league. I looked at the teamrankings.com, which had, I believe Seattle was the worst team kicking field goals entering today. They were kicking something like 84%. Blair Walsh was just a tick above that, and now with Sunday's miss, he's now 12 of 15 and has fallen to the worst. The 46-yarder was puzzling to me. I had a lot of followers on Twitter saying that even if that kick doesn't get blocked, he was missing it wide left anyways. Now, I don't know if that's a product of their lack of confidence in Walsh or if it's actually, verifiable that that kick was going to sail. But
I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I mean, when I looked at the replay on the camera that Fox showed, I don't know if it was.
Okay.
I mean, it looks like it, but the camera is angled a certain way. So
it's like the center field camera in baseball that's just a little bit off.
Yep.
It's hard to tell on the
so
outside
you
corner.
always think it's a strike. And I wonder if there wasn't so much of that they wouldn't have the actual strike zones. Well, there's no kicker zone in where it was going, so we're not quite sure about that. But the reason he had it blocked, it seemed, was that the trajectory was just far too low.
Yeah,
a kick like that,
kind of line drive it.
It wasn't like somebody just jumped over the line and blocked it. I mean, if that happens, then it's not his fault. But in this case, it looked like he just kicked it wrong.
Here are 2 things that I think are very concerning for Blair Walsh beyond his performance, because we've certainly touched on that. He was very defensive at his locker after the game when the media went up to him. He said, you're asking the same questions every week. How about some originality? It's like, well, okay, but what there's one person that gets to change the narrative, and that would be Blair Walsh. The second thing that I would say is concerning is that when asked about it, Zimmer basically said in his opening statement to the media, well, we got to make the kicks. And then when pressed, someone said, how do you feel about Blair Walsh? And he said, I don't know. Today's not the day for evaluations. That's a bad sign.
It sure is.
I think you'd say if you felt 100% confident in your kicker, you'd say, he's our kicker. You'd quash all those threats. You'd say the same thing for a quarterback. He's our quarterback. We like him. He had a bad day. When you say today's not the day for evaluations, not a good sign.
And you go back a couple of weeks after another couple of kicks were missed, there was a question to Mike Zimmer about it, and his answer was not yet when he was asked if they would bring in other kickers. Yeah. Well, maybe this is yet. And I understand that he hasn't missed too many field goals since, but he also hasn't had too many field goals since. There haven't been that many opportunities since going back to early in the season. So I think what is bothersome the most is just that he's getting defensive, but it has seemed to be a mental issue with the pressure
Sure.
and it getting to him. And you wonder if that's just going to keep going, as there will be more key kicks. I mean, that's the thing. Would you rather have someone a little less talented, can't maybe kick it as far or with the distance, who isn't going to have this happen, who isn't going to choke? And every time he misses a kick, it goes back to that 27-yarder wide left, and that's why it's always difficult in these situations. Mm-hmm. Now, Gary Anderson was able to stay around Minnesota for a few more years and was a good kicker, but he had been around a really long time and shook it off. I mean, with Blair Walsh, I don't know. I mean, I just don't know how you recover from that, because it's on your mind every time. And it's weird, and I'm not saying I called it, but when he went out there to tie the game with the extra point, just looking at him, it looked like, man, he is just shaking in his boots for this extra point. He just looked totally rattled even going out there to kick it, and that has been the case anytime it's been a key kick so far this year.
You wrote about Sam Bradford after the game, kind of having, that gutsy drive that looked like, hey, here's I think as you put it, as a defining moment in Minnesota. Of course, with a new offensive coordinator in Pat Shurmur. I guess define new however you want to. Pat Shurmur's been here. We'll see how much the offense changes in the weeks going forward from Norv Turner's offense. But anyways, to get to the point about this being a you-made-it moment for Bradford in Minnesota, we kind of forget about that after Sunday's game because they lost in overtime.
We will, and he ends up going 31 for 40 and was effective for most of the day. They had the one bad drive that will stick out in our minds for a really long time, where there's 2 offensive line penalties, and then he's sacked, and it's 4th and 32, just like that.
Well, they started inside the red zone, and they had to punt.
Right.
That tells you everything you need to know.
That normally does not happen. Yes,
the percentages aren't high.
I don't know, but I think that's bad.
Yeah.
But other than that, though, I mean, you go into the fourth quarter with a deficit, and you've got a chance to take the lead. You've got a chance to put your team ahead. It's 13-9, and twice in the fourth quarter, he drove his team down into the red zone. One of the times they score and go ahead with 27 seconds left or so, 23 seconds left, and I think we would have walked out of here today feeling like they're back. Sam Bradford's back, and Pat Shurmur is the guy as the offensive coordinator, and everything is great. This is how the Vikings can win, and they know that when they need their quarterback the most, when the opponent knows they're throwing the ball and knows they're desperate to drive, that they could still do it and they could still succeed. And they weren't just short passes. There were some throws down the field, too. Back-to-back throws to Adam Thielen for big plays with under 2 minutes left. And I think that over Bradford's career, it's been a bit of a concern of, can this guy be a big game quarterback? Can he be the guy that drives you down at the end? Or does he have to be sort of put into that game manager, not the guy you can rely on? And I think what he showed today is that when you need a big drive, he can come up with it. He just got let down by the defense at the end, so what we're going to end up feeling like is, everything was bad. But I thought Sam Bradford performed very well today and really, really fit well with what Pat Shurmur wants to do.
Couple of things that are probably going to get overlooked with the Blair Walsh saga swirling all around us. A couple of missed tackles on that final play that actually gave the Lions the win. Harrison Smith and Xavier Rhodes both missing tackles. Kind of uncharacteristic of both of them. Also, Mike Zimmer calling a timeout with just less than 30 seconds left. I had a lot of fans on Twitter saying they were upset by that decision to not let more time run off the clock. Is there any other thing that stood out to you besides Walsh and those two things that cost the Vikings on Sunday and that are, I look at most of those things fairly easy to fix if you're talking big picture. For Sunday, obviously, it's too late, but are there other concerning trends that you took out of Sunday's game?
When will this team actually be good inside the red zone? I've always looked at red zone stats as like kind of eye roll, like, I don't know, if you score on a 30-yard touchdown, but you're bad in the red zone that day, well, whatever, right? And who picked the 20-yard line anyway?
Sure.
It's like it's just arbitrary. That's the red zone. But it's going on a couple of years now that they have been really poor at punching it in when they get inside the 10-yard line. And today you go 2 for 5. That just cannot happen. And they get a 3rd and 2, and they're at the 5 or 6 yard line and can't score any points is just purely unacceptable. And the fact that they keep going back to Matt Asiata, one
As
yard
if he's
runs.
Adrian Peterson.
Well, that's the thing is that this offensive line is not good. It's never going to be good. So just bringing in a bunch of big people and stuffing them up against other big people to try and get a yard has failed over and over.
Yeah.
It failed in Chicago, too. I mean, it's failed several times this year, and I don't know why there's any confidence to do that. I mean, either throw a quick pass with Sam Bradford. I mean, if you think about the screen game, he's completing like 75% of those passes to Stephon Diggs today. 13 for 14 throwing to Stephon Diggs. That's a good option for a 1-yard play. How about spread it out and quarterback sneak? And you'd say, well, Bradford's not that good at QB sneaking. Well, Tom Brady QB sneaks every time it's 4th and inches. They go spread offense and QB sneak with Tom Brady, who last I checked ran a slower 40 than I do. So I think there needs to be a strategy change there, and I think that's a huge letdown. The offensive line all took responsibility for that, but I think that kind of goes on the play caller too, that Pat Shurmur, though we like the fact that he is here now, I would say that it doesn't mean everything he did was perfect.
Hand it to Linval Joseph.
Yes.
Easy solution, man.
Linval Joseph was put in as a fullback today and was a decoy.
Yeah, but he's in the game twice on offense. They score twice. I'm just saying.
There's got to be a connection.
I'm just saying.
He did score a touchdown in college.
That's right.
At East Carolina. So, I mean, he's dangerous.
You're welcome.
He's somebody that you've got to be afraid of is the other team. Well, anytime they bring in a giant defensive tackle who's that athletic, the other team at least has to look at that and
You
go,
got to account for him.
wait a minute, are they going to give him the ball? Because
I
I don't
know.
want to tackle that guy.
I don't know if I can solve their left or right tackle problems. I don't know if I can solve their kicker problem, but I just solved their goal line problem. So I think Meatloaf said like 1 out of 3 ain't bad or something like that.
In this case, 2 out of 5 is bad inside the red zone.
See what you did there.
So in baseball, it'd be fine.
Yeah.
In red zone football offense, not so fine.
No. We'll see if the Vikings can straighten it out next week. I believe Washington is on the docket. We'll have a Vikes Insight video midweek this week out at Winter Park, probably in front of the ship. You guys seem to like that Viking ship.
You really did like the ship.
We will keep doing the videos there as long as you'll keep watching them. So
I
thanks.
think if we climb up in the ship again, we're going to get arrested.
We are
though.
definitely
So
going to get kicked out.
I don't
It
wanna
was
do that.
Perilously close the last time we did a Facebook Live video in there.
I'm claustrophobic. I can't be in jail.
We thank you for your attention. We thank you for your interest in Vikes Insight. He's Matthew Coller. I'm Derek Wetmore. We'll catch you later this week.